Hello, and welcome to the Healing Dreams Project, exploring projective dream work for your health and wholeness, with hosts Billy Ortiz and Dr. Roy Spitz. I am the producer, Viviana Guzman, and today we have a very special guest. With us, we have Marisa Goudy. She is an author, writing coach, and a myth worker and story healer. In 2020, she released her first book, The Sovereignty Knot: A Woman's Way to Freedom, Power, Love, and Magic. She is the host of the Not Work Storytelling Podcast. Find her at marisagoudy.com and look for her podcast on your preferred podcast platform. Welcome, Marisa. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's wonderful to be here.
Yeah, so I thought we could I just want to dive into who and what you do as a author, writing coach, myth worker, and story healer. Can you
Mm.
tell us a little more about all that?
Yes. So, really, at the core of my work is Ireland, Celtic spirituality, and really just a connection to that land and those stories. Yet I'm an American who's my family's been here for generations, and so there's really kind of the riddle for me is what it means to live really consciously. I'm in New York in the Hudson Valley on Lenape lands. What it means to live here consciously and love this land just as I did Cape Cod, Massachusetts, where I'm from originally. And also know that my stories come from 3,000 miles away and from, ancestral lines. And so that's a huge part of my kind of living question. And that's really where I come to as myth worker. That's why where the podcast was born from, was really that process of telling stories and then talking about why they still matter, because I'm really a strong believer in the sense that our mythologies, whether, most often from our thousands of years ago, but also the folklore and the personal mythologies you sometimes create from them are so relevant and so important to the work that we do.
Mhm. And how about the book, Sovereignty Not?
Yes. So that came out in February of 2020, which was the least auspicious time in the entire world to release a book. So we all know that when Royce's book comes out, it's going to be a brilliant timing because February of 2022 means that I still have a lot of books in my basement. But, that book in many ways is a mix of my own memoir of such as it could be, right as I was turning 40 years old. Was the book I know I needed to have read when I was in my early 20s, really seeking out my own understanding of life, of the archetypes in it. I present the idea of the princess, queen, and the wise woman, and how we are all three at all stages in our lives. Free the princess, crown the queen, and embrace the wise woman is really at the core of so much of my work. And it really also gave me an opportunity to weave in some specific bits of Celtic mythology. The sovereignty goddess of Ireland has been an inspiration for me for 20 something years. The difficult turn these days after everything with COVID, sovereignty became kind of a sticky wicket. So I've had an interesting relationship with the book myself as I kind of start to say, no, but it's coming from the sovereignty goddess was the embodiment of the land. She would choose the rightful king in order to provide for the people of the community and for the more than human world. And so a lot of my work is just sort of continuing to stay in conversation with that, even when it's a hard word to be using out there, because people have used all different aspects of what they project onto sovereignty, and yet what are its more original meanings and origins.
Mhm.
I loved what you said, princess, queen, and what was the third one?
The princess, queen, and wise woman.
Wise woman.
Yeah.
Okay, I love that. And then the podcast, Not Work Storytelling,
Mm-hmm.
not KNOTWORK.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
So the podcast sort of came into being, it would be 2 years ago on the autumn equinox. And I am a strong believer in communicating with the guides, or I am because they communicate with me. I was at my equinox fire in my backyard, and there's a character actually who is a sovereignty goddess who appears in my book, who I tell a bit of her story. And I actually have a line in the book that says, "Remember her. She has a strange and difficult name, but she deserves to be remembered." And her name is Mungin, which sounds kind of not pleasant to the non-Irish speaking ear. But she came through and she pretty much told me, "So you're going to tell my story, right? And you're going to speak
Mhm.
on behalf of the guides, gods, and ancestors." And so I try to take direction when it's given to me, incredibly obviously. And so by Imbolc, which is February 1st, Bridget's Day of the following year of 2022, the podcast was born. And I knew it was really important to be mixing in retellings of old myths with these kind of reflections on why they're so resonant. And it's funny, I'm a writing coach. For the most part, people come to me because they think they have to write a book. And I've started to finally prepare folks. I said, listen, if you don't end up writing a book after our 6 months together, I need to tell you that might be the greatest accomplishment of your life, because there's a really good chance that your creative impulse doesn't want to be shoved between a couple of covers with 200 or 300 pages. It's possible. And we live in 2023 and a lot of the world has changed. And so I thought I was going to sit down to write a book. And I ended up creating a podcast and I'm at 45 episodes in with 45 stories collected, half of which are my own that I've told, and half of which come from guest storytellers. And to me, at this point, I'm creating this body of work that I love my book and I'm so proud of it. But wow, the podcast is even more that it's holding in terms of my own creative vision and what I want to offer. So they're sort of
Mhm.
evolving together at this point.
Mhm.
Wow. That just sounds so intriguing and beautiful, mystical, and magical all at once.
We're a well-matched crew in this world, I think, for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I can't help but notice, your beautiful long red hair, and then Billy's beautiful long blonde hair, and Royce's beautiful long white hair, and then my long black hair. We're quite the goddess clan here.
Mhm.
Are.
Gods and goddesses.
Yes. I'll share something. The first time I ever met Royce was at a retreat, and he was the only man amongst a group of women, which I think Royce has probably been in that situation a couple of times before. And we had stick-on tattoos. And I remember with great pride when Royce put a glowing goddess tattoo on his foot. And it was just the most
Oh,
wonderful thing.
I remember that now, and I had forgotten that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. What a fun memory. Thank you for holding that all these years. Um, as we move into the podcast and work with Marisa's dream, I will allude to more about how it is that Marisa and I came to be um, uh, a kind of brother and sister soul explorers as I was writing my book. And that time in New York, in the Catskills, um, invited me to um, venture into this very kind of scary world of writing a soulful book. And so I will say more later in the podcast. Always will be appreciative of that moment, spiritual moment of our conversing and the many moments that followed.
Well, it was such a pleasure to work with you along that for the years that we did. And in so many ways, it was, yes, it was writing coaching, because at the end you've come up with a beautiful product, but it's also the work that I love doing, which is story healing, which is that sense of knowing that it's about the process as much as anything else. It's about the ways in which it works on us, we work on it. It's always being in relationship with that which wants to show up on the page, that which we can't say in the book itself, but that still needs to be explored and healed and spoken of, and brought to light and danced with in the shadows and everything in between.
Yeah,
I understand.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to comment. You hold writing group workshops too. Can you tell us a little about that?
Yes, I've been running online writing community since 2018. So before COVID made Zoom calls cool, I have been doing it because I'm a mother of two and have been working out of my office at home since I decided to stay home with my kids when my first daughter was an infant. And so I've been running these on Wednesday afternoons for years. I'm making a shift actually in this fall into doing Sunday retreats for doing like a 3-hour sort of deep dive, just playing and interested with people's schedules and how they want to create. But it's actually perfectly connected in the sense that what I'm calling this particular, and I call my groups the Writer's Knot. And this autumn Writer's Knot is all about writing with the guides, gods, and ancestors, because I'm still in conversation with Mungen, with this particular goddess guide who came in and whispered her story to me. So I'll be asking her to collaborate with all of us in this series of Sunday retreats that I'll be leading throughout the fall. Thanks for asking about those.
Wonderful.
Adriana.
Sounds exciting. So catch all that at marisagoudy.com. So are you ready to dive into your dream?
I would love to.
While she's getting ready to dive, I need to say that Marisa has been a valuable soul journeyer with me the last 5 or 6 years, as she has been integral in the creation of my book. And I could write a book about all of that process. And I'm so happy that she's with us just on a personal note. And she's always been so expansive and willing to walk in places that I just wouldn't expect a book coach or an editor to walk. And that has been such a gift for me in my journey. So having her here to share her dreams instead of me writing in my book about dreams, this is a beautiful turn of the tables. So I'm especially happy to have you here, Marisa.
Oh, Royce, I keep your book at arm's length. Parts it's that whole bragging sense of like, I've been working with this amazing man for 6 years and his book is here. So I'm so excited to have the version that doesn't just say not for resale, and have the real version in my hand. But thank you so much for introducing me to your community. It's wonderful to be able to be here with you. Thank you.
Yeah, you're very, very welcome.
All right. Wow, my face already hurts from smiling. It's obviously off to a wonderful start. But shall I tell you my dream?
Yeah, please go right ahead.
All right. So I've called this one A Submarine Voyage Interrupted, and it's from January of this year. I'm taking a submarine to Ireland with my mother, who passed away in 2010 at age 60. We arrive at the airport, which I guess we better call the seaport. And I instantly realize I have my bag, but not my backpack. And I must not have my purse either. I don't have my passport, my wallet, or my laptop, or my phone. We're running late and head in anyway, stressing but unwilling to quit. We make it through the security corridor and into a submarine full of patched canvas seats. Some are long benches and some are in pairs. There's a crew, and it's almost like flying. Apparently, my coming was a last-minute decision. Another woman, an older redhead of at least 60, was supposed to be my mom's traveling companion, and she's pushed to sit off in another row. I want to feel bad for usurping her, but I'm so excited to be going to Ireland. I could feel my huge dopey grin starting in the airport parking lot, growing despite the worry that I'd never be permitted aboard. Seated, we set out. I have the first jab of fear when the submarine dives beneath the green water. There are small windows. We don't stay under for long in speed just beneath the surface, perhaps along a river or a water highway. Suddenly, Mammy, my mom, is gone, perhaps still aboard and waiting for me somewhere else. I'm back on the quest to find my damn passport. I find a friend who, in waking life, is actually someone who ran my kids' preschool. And she's 60 when this dream happened, which feels important. And she's with a friend, but in this case, she's acting unhelpful. I still need help, though. I can't remember my dad's phone number. So I call my younger sister, Lauren. She seems friendly and clueless about where I'm going and whom I'm with. I get off the phone with her quickly. And then I get a hold of my dad, as essentially my friend Michelle, who I mentioned before, essentially walks away. Dad is at a football game. My dad is at a football game day party and is all fired up. He's talking with the players and former players. I have no sense that he can help me as he is near Boston and the seaport, my missing passport are all at home on Cape Cod, which is where I did grow up. Time is running out, and maybe it does run out because the next thing I know, I'm working at some corporate office and I have some sort of problem. It's not related to travel or to passports, or at least it doesn't seem to be so. I start to see all the digital profiles of young female coworkers, and they emphasize the importance of teamwork and supporting one another. Many of them live in Bourne, which is a town that's split by the Cape Cod Canal. They're from the in-between place between home on Cape Cod and this airport seaport that's in Boston. And I don't know these women. I think I have been avoiding them, unwilling to assimilate into this sort of a corporate environment. They're encouraging and willing to help me join some sort of program in the Boston area to further my career or something. In this dream, I am my 23-year-old self, and I'm dating my boyfriend from that time and trying to figure out how to take the opportunity, even though I have this boyfriend. I wrote that I presume that the problem was about the location. For some reason, I couldn't take the job because of him. And then I wrote this down, which seemed important because the fact that I said it was unrelated. A dream image that seems unrelated, dreaming of Bridget, the goddess and saint of Ireland, or at least the intellectual correspondences associated with her. And just a waking life note is that I was, in the time of this dream, I was deep in the process of creating events around Bridget's day. So she was sort of part of everything. And a dream in which I tried to take a submarine to Ireland. And that's it. Shine, as they say.
Right. I cannot tell you how many dreams I've worked where people have lost their identification and their belongings in the process of traveling. So when I say it's a dream, I say I have my bag. That's my suitcase with my clothing, or what's the bag that I?
Yeah, I think I have the big checked bag, but I don't have the bag that has the essential documents and things in it that you would keep on your person all the time.
Right. And I say something like, I don't even have my purse or my phone. So everything. So in my version of these types of dreams, there's a invitation from the dream world for me to create a new identity, something very important about getting rid of all the things that identify me as who I am now. And it's stressful. It's always stressful in the dream, but there's some hint at, am I ready to create a whole new self?
Just to piggyback onto what Billy is saying, this is a long dream, so I'm trying to pick up some elements. Something about the phone. I don't have a phone, and yet I need to reach my father.
Right.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
And that, for me, in my projective process, relates to not having my bag, and again, identity, and also, and perhaps we'll get into this more, but for me, it's also a kind of a challenge from my dream self to not depend on what my waking life would want me to do, which is to use my phone and dial my father. And the dream won't have that, which speaks to me about how I'm being invited to, in a sense, go more on my own. That I have the phone within me, in a sense, that resource.
Right. There's also sort of a dream joke with anything that starts with sub, like subway, submarine. It's about the subconscious. It's something that the dream is helping me to look into, explore my own personal subconscious. I often use the more Jungian term of the unconscious, because that connects us, not only my personal unconscious, but the collective unconscious. But sub is my subconscious. It's the parts of me that are below the surface. So even if somebody dreams about Subway sandwiches, I think of that, because that sub is sort of a hint. So in my dream, that's another piece of why it had to be a submarine rather than an airplane.
I could.
And go ahead.
I want to just continue dovetailing on what's been brought up. And if it were my dream, there's just a lot of fear. It would, if I had I'm leaving tomorrow on a trip to Romania, and if I didn't have my passport, my phone, my computer, and all that, I'd be like, it would be a source of a lot of anxiety. And I loved what Billy was saying, that it was after I couldn't find my mother, that I'm searching for my passport and things, and it's almost like I resonate with this quest to find a new identity, or model. It's like the past, or it's gone, and it is a source of anxiety, but I have this new development that after the deep transformation that is the loss of a parent, it's almost like shedding skin of sorts, which can cause this anxiety. But it's an invitation to sort of assume this new position. I've got the goddess Brigid sort of looking over me, and I resonate with her. I embody her attributes, her strength, her wisdom, her eternal way of being.
So and that's helpful, Viviana, as I'm listening as that's unlocking projections in me. What I would also like to wonder about in the form of questions, because several people show up in this dream, at least allusions to them. One is my father, one is this preschool teacher, another is my mammy, and there's this other person too that is in their 60s. So dreamer's choice here, as I ask, can you tell me, would you please tell me more of some of the characteristics that I, as the dreamer, would think of about my mammy?
I was born on my mother's 29th birthday. We shared a birthday as Geminis. And so in many ways, she was my best friend. She was my twin. So And it's, interesting. This was it was the night before the 102nd anniversary of her father's birth. I realized I had this dream. I went back today and I realized, oh my God, it was my grandfather's birthday was when I had this dream. But she and I did go to Ireland together. Well, she came over to visit me twice. So we had done that trip together before. It would have been she and I setting out on a journey together without my dad and my sister was certainly something that happened fairly often. We'd go on a birthday trip together, just the two of us. And so, and anytime she shows up in my dreams, it's like, Mom's back. Like they're precious jewels to have another dream of her. So every one of them is a gift. And especially the way she sort of just disappeared in the midst of it. That tends to happen when she's there and then she's gone. Tends to be how she appears in dreams for me.
Oh, so this is somewhat of a pattern. When my mother shows up, she also disappears.
Her storyline is never satisfied, I would say. She's there and then she's not there. And that's sort of like how she just drops in. Yeah. Yeah.
So what are some aspects of her personality then?
She was a great mom. She was a great caretaker. She was a health professional herself. She was somebody who had dreams that she never quite got to realize. She was really busy keeping the home and everything down, but she was also the one on the dance floor at a wedding for my sister's friends. She was the one out there in her 50s dancing with the groomsmen in a way that actually was totally appropriate. Like, sometimes when we're like, sit down, this is not okay. She just managed to be both the life of the party and everybody's mom at the same time. And such that like you wanted to take her to the pub in Galway and in Dublin and sit with all of your friends, and she would have everybody laughing all night long, but also would remember that she was the mom, which I've always wanted to emulate, that ability to be in both worlds in her Gemini self, I think, particularly too. Yeah.
So she was quite young when she passed, 60. That's and I noticed the 60 shows up often in the dream. I mentioned my mother's passing at 60, and then the traveling companion is 60, the friend is 60. Does that number mean anything to me as the dreamer? Is like anything in particular?
I certainly want to live past 60. It becomes a preoccupation of when your mother passed, how many years do I get beyond that? And so, yeah, it certainly felt really meaningful, especially when my friend, I've known very much as a peer, though she is in fact 16 years older than me, 15. Yeah. It's about that's her age in the dream. I realized like, oh, that just feels really resonant, that number kept appearing.
So does it feel like some sort of milestone age because of my fear of, I mean, I don't want to, it's dreamer's choice again, but for your mom to pass that young, was it illness or was it an accident or?
Heart attack.
Oh, wow.
Sudden out of the blue heart attack in an immensely healthy person. So it's one of those gives you a whole different perspective.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So in my dream, there's something about, I would look at where that number shows up in my life. It's because the fact when a dream goes to the trouble of repeating a number multiple times within a dream, there's some sort of like code that I'm pay attention, watch out for this. It's going to show up in my life in other ways, not only as an age, but as I don't know, at the end of a sum of money or something. There'd be many different ways that it could show up, and maybe it's going to be like a synchronistic highlight. Like I see the number 60 and boom, I know something's about to happen. That kind of thing. If it were me, that would be one of the pieces that I would pay attention to. I love how you describe it. Your mother sounds just delightful. I mean, she must have been just so full of life and so wonderful. So the fact that she shows up in my dream, we actually did a podcast episode about this. When we get our loved ones that show up in our dreams, and we go, wow, thank goodness they're here, and the visitation piece of it. However, I would never stop just there and say, oh yeah, mom showed up just to say hi. It's more about what I project onto my mother. How am I learning to own those abilities and beautiful qualities myself. I project out onto my mother all this wonderful stuff about, yeah, she was the life of the party, and she was like a great dancer, and but she was still the mom. Yeah. So there's this kind of thing about I too can, as Marisa, I can own those qualities in myself. And that's why, another reason why she shows up in my dream, if it were me.
Is my mother Irish?
Irish and French Canadian.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yes. Her mother was French Canadian. Her father's side was Irish.
Okay. And so, as the dreamer, this part that is Irish, did she have the passion about Irishness as you do?
I brought it back to the family. It wasn't something I was necessarily raised with. When I was 13, I came as an epiphany, and then she came right along with me, like it was a waking up for her as well.
Yeah, and thanks for sharing that, because just on an emotional level, I get goosebumps as I heard that story. And knowing you, and knowing, the depth of your and your passion for much of whatever the soul of Ireland is, how you carry that and how you express that. And
I got to interrupt, Royce. This is a lot of projections and a lot of use. So I'm imagining myself as Marisa. Just try it, because I just
and thanks for reminding my heart about that, because I'm in this beautiful awkward space of working with someone who's helped me so much in my writing, and also projecting into this world that the dreamer has provided. So thanks for that. So it's my awkward age.
Well, it's our bright shadow projections. The more we admire and respect someone, the more the you will come out. So
yeah. Thank you. And to all of our millions of listeners, let's remember this, because this is so true. Our bright shadow shows. So what inspires me as I see my mother in this dream, and I'm aware I see my mother every once in a while in these dreams, I'm on a submarine, and I'm not going as far as, at least in the early part of the dream, I'm not going deep. I'm going a little bit underwater, and I can see things, and we're zooming almost like an aircraft. And then my mother disappears. So the word launch is big for me because of my book launches coming up. Also, though, in this dream, this feels like this part of me that is my mother is launching me, and is moving it, and I'm moving past where she is and where she was. And this is a wonderful gift of her to me to continue sailing underwater towards my goals about how I want to live my life, and how I am creating a life of beauty and meaning and passion. And so this piece of her appearing and kind of moving me along. And that's also when in my projection of the dream, the awarenesses of, I don't have my passport, I don't have my backpack that has all these important, I can't, I need my dad and he doesn't show up, I can't call him.
My dad.
And so this is a powerful invitation of differentiation, that I'm going and I'm going, and as I go, I leave behind aspects that have been anchors for me, to use another metaphor about ships and perhaps submarines, and I'm leaving this behind. And I get nervous and scared. And then there's these other folks that show up that, in a way, represent people I've met since I've been a child. And these are people in my adulthood that also are, in a sense, launching me, that remind me of this aspect of myself that can do this without the old tools that I had been given before. So I'm going to stop there for a moment and see where the dreamer is.
Did Viviana want to go though? Do you
No,
want to say?
please,
Oh,
if
yeah.
you have something to say, Marisa, first.
No, really just that sense of, yeah, right on. And there's a really the moment of, I was afraid about my passport. We get on together and everything's going to be fine. She's gone and I start to worry about my identity again. And I think that's that turning point where I look to other friends. I call dad, but it's that, I think that feels like that one of those points in the dream where it's, oh, I lost this. Now I cling again because she wasn't there. And then it feels like an invitation again to keep finding the way, I guess.
I can jump in here. So I love the sequences of the dream. I start off in a submarine voyage to Ireland. It just sounds so magical and mystical. And it elicits in me, might symbolize a desire for exploration, adventure, that I might need to incorporate in my daily life. It could or some sort of journey of self-discovery or longing for a new experience. So I would wonder if that's something that resembles my waking life as an opportunity to grab. I also I'm drawn to the fact that I'm going to Ireland, contrasted with a sense of guilt for displacing the older woman who was initially supposed to accompany me, my mother. It's almost like I'm worried about taking others' opportunities. So even if it's a chance for personal growth and happiness for me, I'm worried about the taking it from somebody else. So that's just an interesting piece that unveils itself. And then the corporate setting, transitioning there, it's almost like considering different paths, maybe, or opportunities in my career, I wonder. Because it's a little more structured. It's not as this fantastical adventure, but this is, or maybe it's trying to find a balance between the fantastical adventure and then having to be real about things. And I love that it ends, or the image of Brigid is called, because I'm able to bring in or assume the creativity, the healing, the inspiration that the spiritual goddess, I can embody more of her elements. And that is the tool for which I can then revamp my sense of, or need for, adventure, and piece it together with the sense of duty, or whatever the business world I feel that needs to come together.
Wow. Cool.
How does that sound? Resonate?
It resonates. I think it's interesting that I become 23 at that part of my dream, and I'm very aware of my age at that moment. So I really appreciate your sort of framing it in a future tense, opposed to that felt very retrograde for me to kind of, oh, the bad old days of having to work for somebody else. I couldn't go to Ireland, so I had to go do that. So I appreciate that reflection around it being about finding a different way to have structure and to balance the adventure. And I think there was no accident the woman had red hair and was 60. Like that lady was not just some stranger. So she really intrigues me because, of course, if 60 is important, is she me at 60? That's what in reviewing the dream, that's what I found most remarkable, that random redheaded women don't show up and have no connection to a redheaded woman.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's like me and left-handed people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm aware as I listen to the dreamer that I've thought through this dream a lot. And so I've done a lot of work. And so some of this is not new to me. And so if the dream comes to offer new information, new perspectives, new expansion, well, period, with a question mark, I guess. Okay. And here in the end of the dream, as Viviana points out, I'm 23. And this is, again, where I experience patterns of dreams where time folds in on itself, that the present is the past, is the future, is the blah, blah, blah. Keeps doing this, flowing, and I'm in the ocean. So there are these waves of time that envelop me, and time becomes, of course, very fluid, very mixed up. So my projection, and again, a goosebumpy one, is I have a feeling that this 23-year-old me in the dream is being visited by the 60-year-old me, is being visited by whatever age I happen to be in the waking life. And that there is a kind of a deep mystical conversation that has been going on for some time about what am I going to do with my life. And I have this little flash of my boyfriend way back then, and in my projection, it didn't work out period. I learned a lot. And that part of me is showing up again on how I am expanding myself, and also my youngness and my oldness in my projection are partners, that we are kind of trading information about what life is like. I go back to this expansive and expressive experience of I am inventing my whole life, my new life. I do have limitations. There are obvious wounds and scars and things I don't know about. And I am learning to invent my life in a brand new way. And perhaps when I was 23, I had the inklings of that. And my 23-year-old enthusiasm is showing up. And again, I start the dream going to Ireland, and I end the dream exploring jobs that don't seem to really grab me, not in the way that whatever I'm into now grabs me. And so that feels inspiring for me, as well as challenging, to not accept conventionality as what it is that I'm supposed to be about.
Wow. Not accepting conventionality. I like that.
Mm.
Good.
Yeah.
So, what about adjectives to describe Dad? Because he's who I'm trying to get a hold of.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
It's very on brand that dad's at game day. So this is like, imagine this is college football, Boston college football. He's like, and it's all
Mm.
fired up. So he's out there like letting his hair down. Though his hair's a lot shorter than Royce's. And because he's a hardworking guy, his whole life. Definitely he's in retirement now. He's somebody who would really enjoy a good time where he could just kind of go and relax, because he spent so much of his time kind of focused and trying to get it all really right.
Yeah.
And he'd be the kind of guy he'd of course want me to call him whenever I would need help. And sometimes he'd be too busy or distracted because other things would get in the way, because real life, I guess, happens like that. And I think even that sense of like, I called him but he couldn't help, sort of has a resonance to him in that way too, of so something was getting in the way. But he's certainly, immensely devoted to all of us, and at the same time a product of his time in some traditional ways that may not be the most emotionally literate, let's just say. But also but definitely there to show up. And certainly he and my mother had been married for 30 something years. So when losing her, it changed
Mm.
everything about his life. So the fact that he was at a party in this moment, even though she was around, because that was my sister being in the dream and her not even registering, like, mom's back. I'm going to Ireland with mom. And my sister not getting that, and my dad being at a football game was just like, okay, guys, but mom's here and we're
Yeah.
getting on a submarine.
Yeah.
Um,
Great. Yeah, I had one of those fathers too, product of his time. I understand that very much. He said not emotionally literate. Perfect description. I remember that. So there's something about not being able to call Dad though, and the dream puts that obstruction there. And so I think Royce started out with this at the very beginning, is that why is it that I'm not able to complete that call? And
I
that's
do get through to him. He just can't help
well,
me.
right, but at first
Okay.
I don't even remember his number. It's kind of like
Oh, right.
I don't
Yeah.
remember his
Yeah.
number, and then Lauren
Mhm.
helps me call him, right?
Right.
And
Thank you for, yes.
yeah, so there's
Mhm.
so what I was getting at in my version of the dream, since there's this obstruction there, it's kind of, and I think Royce was hinting at that too. I'm challenged to find that help from within. It's like a lot of
Mm.
people dream about trying to call 911, and there's just countless dreams of I try to call 911, my phone is out of battery, or I can't complete the call. I had one many years ago where I picked up, when it used to be just like, you had when wireless phones started, and you pick up the handset and it didn't have a 9. So I wasn't able to call 9. The phone did not even have a 9 on it. So in the general um, way to look at that in my version is that I'm asked at that moment to instead of looking outside of myself for the conventional help. My dad's always there to help. It's more like, how do I solve this for myself? So I have to find my own inner strength, and instead of projecting it out. So what about adjectives for Lauren?
Lauren is, she's the Taurus to my Gemini. She's pretty hardworking, pretty linear. My dad, my mom, and I were kind of the adventure twins, and my sister wasn't necessarily part of that in the same way. She was 4 years younger, and it was kind of,
Mhm.
it just was the way that family dynamics worked. She would be off out hanging out with her friends. My mom and dad and I would go to a concert together. And she's somebody who we have a great relationship, but when we connect, and then sometimes we can go long periods without talking to each other. She lived in the West Coast for a long time. So, and we were siblings. We were 4 years apart. We fought like banshees when we were young, and have, you know, found our way back together. But it was my mom that really was the unification of our relationship, and we've had a lot of trouble figuring each other out with her gone, and it's been sort of a long process.
Mm-hmm. I am drawn towards this because I'm wondering if Lauren, for me, as a kind of this is probably not very poetic, but is she kind of a reality check for me sometimes? And part of me appreciates that and resents that, because, you know, I would go party, so to speak, to a concert with my parents, and she would kind of do her thing, and as I experience her as linear, and if I know anything about the dreamer, this one and the one I'm talking with, linear doesn't really ever describe the dreamer. And so I would have to have these conflicts because this is my other self. And so I explain this dreamy dream, and it's like, whatever, you know, whatever. This is just me doing this again. And so I'm wondering if part of what is new, again, Royce's projection, is that I'm needing to kind of reacquaint myself with the part of me that, again, a projection that isn't as developed, that I need to work on in order for me to live out my passion more effectively.
Yes.
Very nice. Very
Yeah.
And I want to keep this aspect of me in the dream pretty small because I don't really want to have to do that. And yet I invite her into my dream.
Yeah. Well, and because
boy, is this a projection or what? You know, this is my stuff. It's like, I want to live in the dream. I want to go sailing in a submarine across the seven seas, etc.
that's how it works.
That's how it works.
The deeper we get into the dream, the more shameless the projections become. We start seeing ourselves in the dream.
That's right. I'm not ashamed of them. I am embarrassed.
That's just it. Yeah. Wow.
I think Viviana's percolating on something.
No,
Watching her here.
Just my friend Billy. I've learned that anytime we dream of water, especially this is the ocean, this is represents the collective unconscious, and also just the fact that I go underwater, but it's for a short period of time, and the windows are small, so any kind it just would it resonates for me if it were my projection. It's like it's an adventure, and I'm losing my identity in the process, but it's okay because it's short, and it's just going to be short. So it has like a final, not a final. It's not as scary as I maybe initially thought it would be.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, there's a great story that Marion Woodman, one of my heroes, she talks about when she traveled to India and she got very ill, dysentery, and was sick for days, weeks. And she got so delirious that all she could do was stare at her passport on her night table and kind of remind herself of who she was. And she had like a little book of poems and a Bible, like a New Testament, and her passport. And I just never will forget that, because I thought, you know, I've actually felt so sick in my life sometimes where you actually have to remind yourself of who you are. So that's one of the things that I think of with passports. Whenever it shows who it's such an official form of identification. It's recognized worldwide. So it's different than a driver's license or an ID card, you know, because this is who I am across the globe, and I'm accepted. So there's something about not having my passport and having this concern and worry and calling my dad for help, and then Lauren somehow has to be part of that, and that's what I. So in my version, as Royce was saying too, there this is that part of me that occasionally has to remember that life requires linear thought. Life requires hard work. Life requires, you know, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday in order for things to make sense. And I can live in the other world as long, and I love the myths and I love the, you know, the ethereal. I, Billy, have this issue where I mean, one dreamer that I recently started working with, she was saying, you know, you are in the other world a lot, you know. So she said, I got this real big hit that you need to walk around on the grass with barefoot and ground yourself, Billy, because I'm like, oh, okay, wow, I never thought about it. I think you're right, because the in my version, there's this Lauren and my dad remind me of that need to ground myself and follow in things in a linear fashion every now and then to get things done.
Straight lines to go with the spirals. That's what I often talk about with my clients as a projection in many ways, in terms of how we tell stories and how we get things done.
Very good, very good.
I have a question about this young man and my father in the dream. The male energy, whatever that is there, and yet not, in my projection, not very powerful. I don't know where to go with that except to just project and say that's the way I feel in the dream.
Yeah, I think it's significant that, like, football was definitely where he was, which I think is just interesting. Off camera football was what was occupying the male psyche, and that's great spectacle and, you know, sense. And then I mean, this boyfriend from college and into graduate school is often a character in my dreams as sort of a side being, which is where it comes in.
He shows up every once in a while.
He does, with some, because I was going through a lot of dreams before this, and it's interesting. I had forgotten about this dream completely. I just happened to find it in my journal, so I revisited it only today, and it was, if it was there, it was in the subconscious submarine space. But I think it's interesting that he appears too in a sort of off-camera way as a worry of someone who would hold me back from doing a thing which I thought I was supposed to do but didn't want to do anyway. You know, the waking nature of that dream was that we were two really nice people who really, really wanted to love each other, and we just were like, actually no, but circumstances kind of brought us together. He and I, you know, he came to Ireland with me. Last time I was in Ireland before I went most recently was when I was 23 with him. So there's resonances of just, there's some overlaps that are interesting in that moment too.
Yeah. There's that line that Jeremy Taylor used to say that I used to love. He said, every dream is an attempt at an autobiography. You know, there's a little bit of our past, as Royce was saying too, there's a little bit of our past, a little bit of our current life, a little bit of our possible future. And it's like, and the mix of who I want to be, and the term that was used before is like living my most authentic life. You know, that I think that's the subtitle in my version of dreamwork. All dreams have that subtitle of how do I become more of my authentic self, and how do I become more, how do I follow my right livelihood. There's that subtext to every dream. There's this idea of, what does my soul really want? What is my soul crying out for? And I'm busy with other stuff, you know, but the dream is always going to vote for that.
I Royce needs to say amen, sister, on that. That is such a true thread in all, if in my projection, in all dreams, and in this dream, how to live out my true authentic self, not necessarily happy self, not necessarily what the world calls success self, my real soul self, my authentic self. And again, in my projection, the dream is calling me to pay attention to what my soul wants, how my soul is, in a sense, demanding. Okay, so then at the end, I have this semi-waking life image of the goddess, Bridget. And for me, that is like, aha, my authentic self shows up in this projection about this goddess who is, in a sense, my deepest part of who I am. Viviana, I see that hand.
Yeah, sorry. I was just well trained in school.
I was well trained in seminary to see that hand. So I see that hand.
I just have oh, see, I'd lose it. And see, I think of something and then I lose it. Anyway, I had 2 points. I can remember one. Just wanted to touch on the fact that the 3 locations came up in my dream: Bourne, Cape Cod, and Boston. And if it were my dream, look, these locations could represent maybe different aspects of my life, or different stages of my journey, of my path. Cape Cod could symbolize my past or a place of comfort. And Boston could represent, I don't know, new opportunities or challenges. And Bourne, split by the Cape Cod Canal, might suggest like a transitional phrase or a decision point. How does that resonate? And there was something else too, and I'm going to see if I can. Oh yes, I thought of something else too. Does that resonate for you at all?
It does. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, there's a lot there. Yeah.
The other, I just thought 60, and in numerology, often we end up adding all the numbers together. And in this case, it would represent 6. And 6 in the tarot language is the lovers, and that's 2. And then I am Gemini, the dreamer. As the dreamer, I'm a Gemini dreamer, which is also 2. So there's just that sort of layer of 2s in my, I don't know, my love of travel and excitement, and my need and other love of, I don't know, family responsibility, and bringing it all together. Again, because of Bridget at the end, she is the key, I think. And she is the key to embody as the way to merge all these aspects and the challenges that are brought in this dream.
Yeah,
cool.
I love that.
So it just hit me that the 60 could also, because I don't know if you're familiar with the I Ching, and there's 64 hexagrams, and they each, they're represented by different things that appear in nature. So hexagram 60 happens to be limits and connections in this particular translation. So that might be a place to also look at what I like. Brian Brown Walker's translation of the I Ching. He's a man that from Boulder, and I think he just makes it so accessible, because it's this ancient Chinese book that's been, retranslated over and over again. But Brian Brown Walker, and there's another woman that does, I forget the author's name, but it's called The Everyday I Ching, and it's more like talking, instead of this ancient references to symbolism, they kind of just give it to you direct. So that might be something that might be helpful too. So hexagram 60?
Well, that invites me to think about, for me, six. My healing work is with the Chumpy stones from Peru, and so
Oh,
there's 13 of them in the set that my teacher channeled in and called through. This wasn't in my bio. This is my second book. And in
well,
this work we use
because
work
there's
with,
some
Can you hold it up again?
and also
yeah.
say the full title, because some people just listen via audio and they won't see the
So the book is called Divine Embodiment, The Art and Practice of Chumpy Illumination. And my teacher, Eleonora Mendelara, I've co-written a couple of books with her, but this was our most recent one. And in this tradition, in the Peruvian Andes, there's usually 6 stones that have been found at Machu Picchu and other sites. Eleonora's work over the last 30 years has really channeled in 12 of them. And then now we're working with a 13th stone. But the 6th stone is communion, which in so many ways is that sort of coming together in that. And it always reminds me of, the as a Catholic kid, it always reminds me of the communion bread, but it's also that sense of sitting around the table with all and with all that is. And then of course I'm just realizing too is that a 60 is that there's 5 12s, and that feels sort of significant in that too, in that multiplicity of the number 12. So I appreciate, and tarot is really important to me as well. So Viviane, I really appreciate kind of calling in the lovers. And I'm not really that familiar with the I Ching, so it's just interesting to call in these different things.
And the 0 is the full. So 6 is the lovers, 0 is the fool. So you can split it apart in that way. This is why dream work is so multi-layered and multi-dimensional. We could go on and on and on. But does it feel as though this is a good place to pause with your dream? And I say pause because, it never really ends. I mean, we will continue to process and work with your dream because it's now become our dream as well. So, is there anything else you want to look at specifically in your dream?
This is sort of just a funny thing that I've realized in the course of our conversation, and the fact that the Cape Cod Canal is important to this dream is that there actually were German U-boats, submarines, in the Cape Cod Canal during World War II, which is just interesting. I hadn't thought of that until now.
But the dream knew that. See, the
dream knew that.
The dream knew that. So it had to bring up that again as a possible connection.
I think what I'll keep playing with is the fact that there was, even though I don't like this office system, was very strange to me, and it was really these women who were they were concerned about community and creating that. And I'm really sort of curious about the ways in which in the dream it felt a little bit artificial, but I'm really curious, as we're talking about authentic self and all these different ideas about coming into, because I didn't want the job. I didn't want to get stuck into that. But now I'm really feeling invited to sort of play with that more and see what opportunities were there, in the sense that I was really, they were inviting me there. They were creating something for me. And that, to me, in the first, it just felt like I didn't get to go to Ireland, and so I had to go get a job. I felt like that's sort of the 23-year-old's version of that dream, which is literally true. I came home from Ireland at age 23 and had to go get a job at a place I really hated. That's more obvious now. I'm kind of glad I didn't read that into it in our original conversation. But that's something that's going to keep intriguing me as I keep playing with it.
And it's such a beautiful age. When we're 23, we don't even really know what a great age it is until later we go, oh, right, when I was like 23. And it's like this, because now I'm in my 60s. So it's really hard for me to go back and go, wow, I think of my 23-year-old self, and I have to forgive my 23-year-old self, because I used to think I knew a lot more than I did. but I wanted to make sure that everybody knew I was, I could stand up for what I believed in. So there's a wonderful vitality that we have in our 20s that I think we take for granted. Youth is wasted on the young. That's what I like to say. Anyway, well, thank you so much for sharing your dream. What a brilliant dream. Thank you.
Oh, thank you all so much for holding it.
I want to mention a couple things to all of us as listeners. This is one beautiful reason that group. I wanted to say committee instead of community. So I think that, so I'm going to play with that. Dream work by committee can be very inefficient and yet so beautiful and inviting. And so we have missed a lot of aspects of this beautiful dream. And I have a hunch the listeners, in fact, I had a listener tell me the other day, Royce, when you were projecting or we were working on somebody else, that you missed this big important part. And I thought, well, that's your projection. And that is true. We did miss that big important part that this other person had and couldn't share because they were not a part of the program. So this dream is rich and full. And as Billy said, we will keep working on this because now this dream is our dream. And thank you for this gift. I also want to lift up where the dream ends is one of the great gifts of the dream world. And so when I dream of Goddess at the very end, I have this kind of bolt of energy of seeing my authentic self come into fruition. And I'm grateful for that aspect of the dream, as I am all aspects of the dream.
I Googled because I didn't know who Brigid was. And you look just like her. You are Brigid.
She and I have been in conversation for, I'll say lifetimes. And I just want to say I appreciate landing there because I just realized in the dream, of course, I got to Ireland. The first version of when I read it, I'm like, I got an office job. I got to Ireland in the most authentic, truest, most cosmic way. So I appreciate you just sort of naming her again. And that's actually been her role in my life, is sometimes she's so, I don't want to say I embody her because I have a question about whether we embody deities. There's a lot to that, but she's so close that I can't see her because I see everything through her. So I just really appreciate you all giving me another chance to see kind of the fullness and the awe of her presence in my life. It's pretty darn everywhere. So thank you.
Beautiful. Marisa, can you share with us if somebody wants to get in touch with you to do book work or your storytelling or your podcast, if you could just give all your points of contact again for us?
Sure. I've got a lot. So if you've got Marisa Goudy, somewhere in Google, you will find me. But my main website is marisagoudy.com. That's at Marisa Goudy on Instagram. The podcast lives at notworkstorytelling.com or wherever you listen to podcasts. I've taken my, not as in KNOT, as in Celtic knot work. The pun is great because it's supposed to be not work, because I am somebody who tends to over push myself, but KNOT, work storytelling. I specifically moved my writing coaching work to its own website, to writingcoachmarisa.com, because I've created such a beautiful Celtic sprawl that sometimes people think that they have to, speak Irish to work with me. And no, in fact, I will work with visionaries and healers and therapists and coaches and dreamers of all kinds. So thank you so much for this opportunity, everyone. I'm so grateful.
Thank you for
pleasure.
coming.
It was wonderful to hear your dream. I loved it. So Billy Ortiz, where can one get in touch with you and what's going on in your world?
And my website is wakeuptoyourdreams.com. I have revitalized the in-person retreats. And I don't know when this is going to be published, but there's another one coming up early October, but always check out the website. I usually do one in the spring and one in the fall. There's also, I help train people to do dream work. I'll have another round of that starting at the beginning of next year. And I also have Zoom groups that meet, one that meets in the afternoons and one that meets in the evenings. And all of that information is up on the website if you check out the calendar. And I also do private sessions as well. So wakeuptoyourdreams.com.
And Dr. Royce Fitz, where can
Royce,
one get in touch with you?
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt as you were trying to be appropriate there. RoyceFitz.com. I'm spiritual counselor and dream worker, and I invite you to explore with me open-hearted soul searching, and the word authenticity is central and core to my being as I invite potential clients to explore their authenticity. And October 25th, my book is released, a Zoom launch. Yay.
And you got to hold it up like the digital version of it. There you go.
Yeah. And there's my book coach and editor right next to me, at least on my screen, cheering me on. And everybody we have a lot of room. My publisher, Thea from Flint Hills Publishing Company, has created this amazing Zoom launch where at least 500 people can join. And, let's break the bandwidth on that. On October 25th, which is a Wednesday and will be 8 p.m. Central Time. So you mathematicians figure out where you are, and please join all of us on that. It's a very gratifying moment, I think, for all of us, for dreamers and soul searchers.
And for the audio listeners, give the title again. So that
yes, thank you. The Geography of the Soul: Dreams, Reality, and the Journey of a Lifetime.
All right.
What if you took a hike, Marisa, what does it say? What if you took a
hike, a saunter, a stravage across an ancient land, and it changed your life, forever.
Yes. Amen. Amen again, sister. Life-changing stuff. Okay. That's who I am. Thank you.
Thank you Thank you.
Well, if you, the dreamer, have a dream for us, we have a hotline. The number is 720-573-9195. I am Viviana Guzman. My website is viviana.org. I'm a musician by day and a tarot, astrology, sound healer, dream worker by night. And that specifically lives on viviana.org/magic. So thank you for joining us. Please remember to share, like, and spread the word. Share your dreams with us. We'd love to hear from you. Again, the number is 720-573-9195. Sharing the language of stories, symbols, metaphors, and archetypes. Thank you, Marisa Goudy, for joining us this episode. It was wonderful to hear your dream. And until next time, happy dreaming.